links in the description to donate to Palestinian families. Y'all should really check them out when this video is done. Free Palestine. If you follow me on Instagram and watch my stories regularly, you've already heard this part, so feel free to just skip ahead. So I get a lot of MLP on my TikTok For You page because a lot of my mutuals like MLP, so the algorithm thinks that I like MLP, which I'm not complaining about because I find the show aesthetically pleasing and I like the fan art. But I saw a post one time that was ranking the main 6 based on who is the worst friend, and coming in at number 6 was Rainbow Dash. The user said that Rainbow Dash has a lot of episodes where she tends to be selfish and doesn't represent the element of loyalty. And it kind of reminded me about how the Loud House treated Lynn in its later seasons. Lynn has so many episodes in season 5 onwards where she's just a jerk for no reason. Or like in Powerpuff Girls 2016, they made Buttercup a dickhead for no reason. Buttercup was kind of mean in the old show too, but she wasn't actively malicious. It came off like she just didn't know any better and just had way more energy than she knew what to do with. Now what do these 3 have in common? You read the title of the video, they're all tomboys. Now this is something that's been on my mind for a while, and I really want to talk about why tomboys are portrayed in this way, why I find it problematic, and how to avoid this kind of stuff in your own writing. Because my ego is so massive that I think I'm qualified enough to give writing tips. First of all, disclaimer. This conversation might be a little surface level from a trans perspective, I guess, which I only bring up because I know that a handful of my followers happen to be trans mask. I don't mean to exclude my trans siblings from this conversation. I just don't think I'm very qualified to speak on this stuff from that angle. I mean, I don't even know how I identify. I'm just floating around in GNC territory. I encourage you all to leave your perspectives on this topic in the comments below if you're so inclined. You can leave a paragraph, it's okay. I'll probably read it. Just do not DM it to me, and no transphobia. Capiche? Alright, let's start with Lynn. I know I said I wasn't going to talk about the Loud House after that video because I don't really want to hate on it too much since I know a lot of people still really enjoy it, but I don't think I got to talk about Lynn in that video, so I'm doing it now. In the first 3 seasons of the Loud House, I liked Lynn. She was nowhere near my favorite, but I enjoyed the episodes that featured her. But she's a very basic character. She was mostly just the sporty girl that ate a lot and had a bit of a temper. And in season 2, they made her superstitious and competitive, traits that looped back around to her love of sports. And that's all good. If you have a massive cast of characters, not everybody has to be deep, especially in an episodic show like The Loud House. But once Savino left Nickelodeon, the show, in my opinion, lost a lot of its charm. And this is when Lynn's character took a massive nosedive. Just because the leftover writers knew Lynn's character does not mean that they understood her. And I feel like because of this, they kicked her most unpleasant traits into overdrive. They made her really gross, aggressive, and cranked her superstitiousness all the way up to 11. It's honestly kind of uncomfortable to watch at times because there are episodes where she is borderline animalistic and it's genuinely making me concerned for the writers. Now this is a textbook case of flanderization, which TV Tropes describes as the act of taking a single, often minor action or trait of a character within a work and exaggerating it more and more over time until it completely consumes the character. Obviously, I think that Lynn has been flanderized, and the reason it bothers me so much is because the flanderization is exactly what turned her into a jerk. Like, they took her tougher, competitive nature and used it to tell jokes about her being an asshole. Like, she eats people's food, takes games way too far, forces her superstitions onto others, and ugh, the gross out. I hate toilet humor with a burning passion. Always have, always will. Unless you're telling like an actual joke and not just acknowledging that bodily functions exist, it's always going to give me the ick. I know the Loud House has always had gross out humor, and to be honest, I never liked it back in the Savino era either. So you can imagine how much I really don't like it in the current era. Tangent aside, I feel like flanderization sucks, not just because of how it dumbs down once enjoyable characters, but it also overwrites other character traits that might have originally made the character likable. Like, the central theme of early Loud House was familial love, even if it wasn't the focus of every single episode. So when Lynn is a dick to her siblings, it's like, girl, do you even like them? I know sibling dynamics are like that sometimes. Trust me, my sisters do everything in their power to lower my self-esteem every time I come home from college. And I know that episodic cartoons like to have a moral all the time, but first of all, they really don't need to. And second of all, if you have to learn not to be a competitive schmuck to your family 50 different times, I'm starting to think the lesson isn't actually sticking. Now I know everyone and their mother has talked their shit about Powerpuff Girls 2016, most infamously being Shadow Streak. And in one of his videos where he's reviewing the episode In the Doghouse, he complains about how the writers have an unfair bias towards Buttercup. Like I said in this show, she's really mean in an unpleasant way, and the writers love to write stories centered around her. And when the episodes aren't about her, she's yapping away as if they are. Anyway, the point is that I commented on that particular video when it came out, and I theorized that Buttercup's pride and tougher personality makes it a lot easier for the writers to write stories where she messes things up and then fixes her mistakes, whereas her more feminine sisters are a lot harder to write for in this manner. Lasso, are you saying that the writers of the show don't know how to write women? That is exactly what I'm saying. They literally kicked Miss Bellum off the show because they did not understand her purpose. And I'm not just talking about how they refused to pay Bubbles and Blossom any attention, but the only traits you could come up with for Buttercup was being an asshat. In the old show, she's the toughest fighter. She throws hands first and asks questions later. Because she's a superhero. When she's not being a superhero, she's sassy, energetic, and yes, she has a bit of a temper, but in a way that's realistic for a child her age. In fact, most of her behavior is literally just her being a child. In this show, she's just selfish and annoying for the hell of it. And because she's like this across 120 episodes, it makes her increasingly frustrating to watch as the series goes on. Now I've watched about 30% of My Little Pony. It's honestly a show that I prefer to experience secondhand, video essays, fan art, friends talking about it, etc. So I'm not too familiar with Rainbow Dash as a character, although I do know the basics. From what I've watched, I feel like Rainbow Dash is the least egregious offender on this list, but none of my mutuals objected to her being included, so I'm guessing it's still a problem. And every time I think of this show, the Iron Pony episode tends to be the first one that comes to mind because Rainbow's kind of a lot in that episode. I'm here collecting screenshots, and actually they're both kind of a lot in this episode, so never mind. But in order for this part of the video to be genuine, I need a more accurate perspective. And I just don't have the time to watch all the Rainbow Dash episodes, so surely I can't do this part of the analysis. So I'm gonna go ahead and pass the mic over to someone who does.
And I believe that's where I come in. Hey everyone, my name is Alexi, and on Instagram my account name is Frontbonnie. I'm mutuals with Lasso, and she let me come on to talk about this segment. I'm a huge My Little Pony fan, and Rainbow Dash is my favorite, so it seemed like a no-brainer to have me talk about this. Out of all the examples here, Rainbow definitely is the least egregious offender. Obviously, there's similarities to other tomboy characters since she likes being athletic and she's competitive, but very early in the show, they do teach the lesson that just because someone is sporty, it doesn't mean they can't be a bit nerdy. Which is great, because that gives Rainbow more depth. She's a bit of a nerd. She geeks out over her favorite book series, she loves talking to other fans about it, and going to conventions for Daring Do. Not only that, but we can see that Rainbow is okay with more girly things, as we see from her spa trips, and the fact that she's generally okay with wearing a dress, as long as it's comfortable for her to fly in. So, despite all this, why is Rainbow Dash sometimes so mean or unlikable? We can see that the writers understand that tomboys can be smart or nerdy and be okay with dresses and more girly things, so what's up? I think it comes down to the fact that since tomboy characters follow the trend of being egotistical and arrogant, the writers applied the same traits to Rainbow Dash since she's, a tomboy. But it's hard to make a character like that sympathetic, and honestly, it's quite easy to mess up writing a character with those traits since you have to be careful to not cross the line. And combining those two issues mean that people get irritated with Rainbow's behavior because sometimes her behavior does cross the line and start to negatively affect and even harm the ponies around her. Honestly, I think the problem with Rainbow's writing isn't that the writers don't know how to write a good tomboy character, because I genuinely believe Rainbow is a good example of how to write one for the most part. But the problem is that the writers sometimes struggle with writing her flaws in a clever way, which leads to her acting like an asshole sometimes. Although that might just be my Rainbow bias coming through.
Big thanks to Alexi for doing that part of the analysis. I could not have done it justice myself. Now on to part 2. There are a couple reasons why I dislike handling tomboy characters this way. Number 1. I feel like it's really doing them dirty by portraying them as dickheads, you know? Like, you can like masculine things as a girl and still be a decent person. When I asked my audience on IG what they thought about all of this, the responses unanimously agreed that a big part of the problem is that people conflate masculinity with being a jackass. And I agree that that's probably a huge factor in this. Masculinity should not equal being an asshole. That is a terrible mindset to have that harms everyone involved. Your character can like sports, be a little sloppy, and still have a tender, loving heart. Those things are not mutually exclusive. Number 2, misogyny isn't cool, and hating on women isn't cool either. Hi, editing Lasso here. So I wrote that part of the video and then I realized that none of these examples have ever been misogynistic in the way that I'm describing, but I was kind of spitting facts here, and I'm sure you can think of examples that have been, so I'm leaving it in. I feel like because of the patriarchal nature of our society, a lot of girls have to learn that there's nothing wrong with femininity as they get older. It's a mindset that I myself had to grow out of too. It's okay if this stuff isn't for you regardless of your gender, but hating on things like the color pink, shopping, makeup, dresses, solely because they're girly is just lame. Just like it or don't. Life is too short for any of us not to enjoy our hobbies. Number 3. At this point, it's super repetitive. Why does every tomboy have to be written like this anyway? And on that note, why is it always sports, video games, etc.? We can't have a tomboy that's like into art or gardening or trivia. Hobbies aren't gendered, so what gives? Now, to be fair, modern cartoons are getting much better in this regard. Like Anne from Amphibia is an athlete, but that doesn't make her a tomboy, and it is not where her character starts and ends. And Luz from the Owl House is canonically gender non-conforming, but her personality doesn't revolve around being androgynous. I like that we're being a bit more diverse about this. I think it can help people come to terms with how they want to present themselves that doesn't come from a place of just hating on women. So how would I approach writing tomboy characters? Number 1. If they are meant to be a good guy in your story, don't make them a jerk. And if they're meant to be a bad guy in your story, i.e. a villain, antagonist, some kind of obstacle for the protagonist, you, the writer, need to treat them like a bad guy. Please give tomboys more personality than just hating on femininity. Having a character that gravitates toward a certain aesthetic is fine, and having them not like other aesthetics is okay, but there is no need for them to be misogynistic, unless the misogyny is a part of the story. And remember, misogyny is a bad thing and should be treated as such. Number 3, if you're going to make a character be mean, give them some redeeming qualities so they're at least fun to watch. You know what I mean? Some of the worst people I know are pretty charming, so unless your character is supposed to be a detestable monster, make them super talented or funny or good at their job or something. Number 4, you know your work better than I do, so if what I'm saying doesn't apply to what you're going for, don't take it too seriously. This is all based on my own personal preference. If you're putting in the effort and having fun, then you should be fine. I told Keys that I would buy her sushi once my channel got monetized, and she rolled her eyes at me. So I need you guys to subscribe so I can buy her sushi and rub it in her face. Also, I may or may not do a Q&A video at 1K subs, so you might as well. Thanks again to Bonnie Front for collaborating with me. I really hope it went well. As of recording this, we haven't actually gotten to the hard part. Anyway, you guys should go follow her on Instagram. Follow me too while you're at it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.